Buffalo Bills fall to third in the AFC East and ninth in the AFC after dropping another loss to the Cincinnati Bengals. This week on the Wandering Buffalo podcast.
You are now listening to the Wandering Buffalo podcast with your hosts, Justin Goddard and Andrew Chang.
Bills Mafia, welcome in and thank you again for joining me on this week's episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast. My name is Justin, and I will be your host today. Another tough one out there. Dropping a game to the Bengals, and a lot to talk about with this one. But I'm gonna talk about the game a little bit, but I want to focus more on kind of the macro of what the rest of the season looks like, with kind of the implication that the Bills have set themselves up for with this point. So I want to start by saying this loss to the Bengals, I think if we were looking at this at the beginning of the year, we didn't see any records. This would kind of be, a shit loss of a team that's had our numbers that we haven't been able to get by. But I guess probably wouldn't be expecting it to be the fourth loss of the season at this point. So the loss to the Bengals itself isn't really eating at me. It's that it's another loss inside the conference, that you've lost, some games in there that you definitely shouldn't have, looking at the Jets, looking at the Patriots. You've played teams like the Bucs and the Giants way closer than it should have been. And it's kind of all just setting up to, we're kind of getting into the must-win territory here. And it's not a spot that I thought we would be in, with the success that we've seen from this team over the last 4 years, to be at the midway point of the season. We're looking at the in the hunt graphic again, which we haven't really had to deal with in a while. And I mean, you're at this point talking maybe two, maybe three losses left to play with for the season, and you got a hell of a stretch coming up. And I would honestly lean more towards 2 losses to play with at this point, just with how competitive the AFC is and how that kind of 5 through 7 playoff spots are going to shake out. The fact that all of your losses have come inside the conference, we're not going to get any help from tiebreakers. Yeah, there's not much to play with here. And, the weird thing is we dropped to third in the AFC East yesterday with the Jets not playing. But I mean, the Dolphins do take a loss. So, you're really still only sitting a game back inside the division. So theoretically, the division is still in play. But it's really hard to look at any of that with, some of these performances the Bills have been putting out. So I want to talk a little bit about this game against the Bengals. And the thing I want to start with off the top is I've seen a lot of criticism for the defense, in particular, not being able to get, that last stop to give the Bills offense one more chance, to take the lead. Bills score the touchdown, go for 2, get it. And now a touchdown and a PAT is going to win the game. Was the defense perfect yesterday? Absolutely not. Allowed a ton of yards. Not getting, pass rush with 4, so they have to blitz a lot. Burrow's, one of the best quarterbacks in the league against the blitz. So you're really fighting a losing battle there. But with that being said, this is a high-powered offense coming in, and not for nothing, the Bills did give up a lot of yards, but the defense gave the offense a ton of chances to put this game away. Now, granted, maybe the Bengals are taking their foot off the gas a little bit, whatever you want to call it. but it didn't really look like that to me. And the defense was getting stop after stop, giving the ball back to the offense. They had the first drive that they gave up against the Bengals. Is what it is. We see that happen almost every week. I would love to see something different happen. But for years, it's really been kind of that first drive is the defense figuring out what the offense wants to do, and then they adjust. But I mean, they allow 3 second half points from the Bengals, and the offense doesn't do anything from their first drive to their last drive. In between there, you got something 7-8 possessions. And they managed to get 3 points for the rest of the game. And it's not just, not converting points, but there wasn't just any real sustained drives from the offense. We're playing a field position game the whole game. It seems like every Bengals starting drive is, plus territory, somewhere around the 40-yard line. And the Bills are starting, inside their own 10. Well, I mean, that type of thing happens when you don't get a few first downs and you're punting from inside your 10. You're going to be playing behind the chains the whole game. So just kind of putting the defense in bad positions all game. And like I said, I don't think the defense was like elite. I don't think they were excellent. But I think they did enough to win you this game. And when you're playing against an offense like the Bengals have, for the most part, we're able to shut down Jamar Chase. T. Higgins had a day. An offense like that is kind of what you expect from teams playing against the Bills, right? You have to figure that they're going to get theirs, try to limit that as much as possible. And you expect your offense to keep pace. And we just didn't see that at all. Even, punting, Sam Martin not doing the defense any favors. Looks like he used up all his good punts last week. Maybe we should have gone for a couple of those fourth downs and he'd have a couple left in the tank. But thought he had a pretty bad day. And then you just combine all these things, and yes, there's criticism to be had for the defense. I think it gets put under, a bit more of a microscope because it's, Sean McDermott's defense. He decided to be the defensive coordinator and the head coach. But I mean, you're talking a defensive unit slowing down that Bengals team when you came into the game down Daquan Jones, Matt Milano, Trey White. In this game, you also lose Benford and Jackson both missed time. Terrell Bernard comes out of the game. Micah Hyde missed some time in the game. Just these injuries piling up, and it is what it is. That's part of football. Next man up, you got to find a way to get it done. But the defense being the group that's keeping the team in a game when, they're down like half their starters. You're bringing in Linval Joseph and Rasul Douglas, as deadline acquisitions, and they're coming in right away and playing. That defense has been banged up left and right. And what are we down on the offensive side of the ball? Dawson Knox. I mean, it's not nothing as a loss, but you also had, that kind of expanded Dalton Kincaid's role, and he's really been thriving. So to me, I really can't get anywhere except for putting this one on the offense. We can talk coaching, we can talk Dorsey, not a good game for Dorsey. We can throw officiating in there. Refs suck. I'm not going to sit here and do the officiating game though. I think if you're watching football across the whole NFL, you'll realize that this is not a unique situation to this game, to the Bills. It's league-wide issue. That's a story for another day. NFL officiating sucks. And it's a real shame that the lack of consistency, the just the overall terribleness of the refs is affecting games. But like I said, that's happening on a league-wide scale. So really what it comes down to is, part of being a really good team, part of being an elite team now is you're going to have to overcome shitty officiating. It's part of the game. You have to do enough to not leave it in the refs' hands, and I have to watch the game again, but I'm sure there's some calls that, went against the Bengals that weren't good too. I know there was one holding call the Bengals got called against them that I remember that was pretty bad. I don't know what to say about that other than it. As of right now, it's part of the game, so it's going to be worse for you some weeks than others, but it is what it is. It's not going away this year, so you got to find a way to do enough that you're not putting the game into the refs' hands. And for me, that comes down to offense right now. You have top, whatever you want to call Josh Allen, top 3-5 quarterback, whatever you want to call him in the league. And you have the offense basically that you wanted from the beginning of the season still. Like I said, Knox is down. But you have all the weapons, and it just seems to me like they have like this plan of, we don't want to run Josh Allen because, we want him healthy for the playoffs. The long-term career for Josh Allen, it's more beneficial for him to be a pocket passer than running. I get all that. I truly do. And that's fine with me on paper. But you also have Josh Allen in his prime right now. And part of what has made him so good throughout his career is that threat of the run. It opens up our run game. If he's the leading rusher, it is what it is, but at least we have a ground game. It makes the RPOs more effective. It opens up the passing game. They have to, give one or two players on the defense to start spying the quarterback, and that gets you some mismatches. I'm all for, wanting to protect the longevity of Allen's career. I'm all for, the idea of wanting him to be healthy in the playoffs. But the NFL is hard, and, kind of forcing yourself into playing left-handed, like in the hopes that when you get to the playoffs, it all works out for you. It's kind of what they're doing right now, and it's not really working. Even against, these bad teams that you should be putting a beating on, like the Giants, the Patriots. It's not working. And pretty much every game since the Jacksonville game, we're seeing the offense kind of look listless. I guess it was a little bit better in the Bucs game. I'll give them that. But the offense just kind of looking meh. Boring, vanilla, not maintaining possessions, putting themselves in third and longs, and all of a sudden fourth quarterback's against the wall, and they kind of unleash Josh Allen, and we hit this tempo, and Josh Allen's letting it fly. He's running, he's doing all those things, and then all of a sudden in the fourth quarter, our offense looks unstoppable. And in this game, unfortunately, Kincaid has that fumble. I can't hold it against him too much. That's a rookie learning lesson. Maybe we're not jumping over people. Maybe you get down when you got the first down and you're not getting a ton more. But Kincaid balled out yesterday. He's really evolved. He's already, taken over as the number 2 option in this passing game. And I didn't really expect that till at least next year, especially when you have Gabe Davis playing in a contract year. Kind of thought, maybe Kincaid would emerge a little bit this year. You let Davis walk in free agency, and Kincaid becomes that second option. You have Davis here, and, in a game that would have been really nice to win, he has 2 targets and 0 catches. And I know the team loves the way Gabe Davis blocks. I know he contributes to the team in ways that don't always show up on the stat sheet. That's not enough right now for an offense that can't find its footing. And at this point, he's kind of moved back down the pecking order to the 4th option. I mean, with Diggs is balling out like he always is. Kincaid's emerging, and Khalil Shakir is starting to, be a lot more consistent. I believe he has 19 targets on the season and has 18 catches. He's becoming much more of a go-to guy for Allen than Davis is. And, at what point can you continue giving Gabe Davis the snap share that he gets? And there's a ton of games where he has a higher snap share than Stephon Diggs because he plays a role in, blocking for the run game and all that. Especially going back to some more 11 personnel with Knox out. If you're going to be spreading the ball around, I just don't know how you continue giving Gabe Davis the snap share that he gets. And this is coming off of, he had a monster game last week. Was, a non-factor the week before. He's a non-factor this week. It's just not enough consistency for a wide receiver too. And, this is something that was a hot topic, as he kind of got promoted to wide receiver too. It was a big debate on, whether or not he had enough of a skill set to be that guy. And, I was on the team of I love Gabe Davis and hopefully he can develop. And I thought he would, give you a little bit more. And right now I'm sitting here telling you I was wrong. I think he thrives as that like 3rd, 4th option when the play goes off script, and he can be great at that. When you're looking at contract extension, the money he's going to get, you can't pay him for that role. So, I mean, at this point, I'm encouraged by what we're seeing from Kincaid and Shakir kind of stepping up in those roles. But even looking at Sherfield and Hardy, I mean, these were 2 big free agent acquisitions that you're getting next to nothing from. And, is this Dorsey? Is this Allen not having trust? Is it utilization? Maybe we got to get those guys in there a little bit more than Davis. I'm not sure, but you're getting into the shit or get off the pot time. And, we have 3 games remaining before the bye. And, we got Denver, then we have the Jets again, and then Philly before the bye. And, there's a really tough remaining schedule left. And, some of these games that we're, looking at as easy wins, air quotes on that, before the season started. I mean, you've already lost to the Jets. You've already dropped one to the Patriots. You're looking at a Denver team that just managed to beat Kansas City. We all know who Philly is. I mean, at this point, I can't take any games that we have left for granted. And, like I said at the top of this episode, you got maybe 2 losses left to play with for the rest of the season. And, I mean, down the stretch, not even talking about the division games, well, I'll throw them in there. You got the Jets and the Patriots. You've already lost to both of those teams. You have Miami again, who, you put the beat down on Miami, but we haven't looked like the same team since. And throw Denver in there, and that's basically our quote-unquote easy games for the rest of the schedule. And then you're still looking at Philly, Dallas, you got the Chargers in there, and you got Kansas City. At this juncture, when we're talking before the season started about this team being a Super Bowl contender, we got to start looking at whether or not this team is actually going to make the playoffs. We're going to leave it at that for right now. Talk more about that after the break. Stick around.
Hey, this is Bills Vader. Now back to the show.
Welcome back in, and thank you again for joining me on this week's episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast. If you made it this far and you haven't done so yet, do me a favor, drop a like, share, subscribe, drop a comment about your thoughts of this team right now as we're kind of sitting at the halfway point in the season. I want to get back and talk a little bit about what this team looks like going forward. Because we're kind of in this urgency stretch. There's not much room for error at this point. I'm talking before the break about, is this team even going to make the playoffs at this point, which is absurd for me to kind of think about right now, based on how I was feeling about this team before the season started, and kind of where I still feel like the team should be at. But they've put themselves in quite a hole right now. So kind of looking at what they have to do going forward. So I don't think they're super far off on offense. I think they're showing, later in these games that they have the horses to get it done. And, granted, some of these teams are playing with leads, they're giving you a little bit more underneath and whatnot. That's the kind of stuff that, even if you're down a little bit, typically we've been able to really get the offense fired up and erase those deficits. And it's not happening this year. I think seeing the emergence of Kincaid, the consistency of Diggs, Khalil Shakir starting to make plays. I think the players are there that they can still turn the season around. I think it's a matter of play calling, and it's a matter of urgency, and it's a matter of you got to unleash Josh Allen. And we saw it a little bit, last week. He was doing some more running. He was letting it fly. And here's my thing with Allen. I'm all for him playing smarter. I'm all for him, after you get the first down and you're about to run into three people, slide, get out of bounds. Don't drop your shoulder through three people. You're not getting through it. I'm all for that. I think there's a certain degree of playing smart versus what we're seeing from the Bills right now. And he just looks too scared to make a mistake. He looks like he's not allowed to run. How many times we see him rolling to the right and he's got space there. He's trying to make a throw anyways when he could have ran for the first down. I mean, this team just needs to get first downs right now to sustain drives. We lost the time of possession to Cincinnati like almost 3-1. And, I think part of this idea of not going tempo early in games is kind of this conservative mindset of, if you don't sustain a drive and you're going up tempo, you're putting the defense back out there real quick and in a bad spot. You're putting the defense back out there real quick and in a bad spot all game anyways. And we saw the tempo working last week. I think Josh Allen plays better. He talked about last week, maybe I got to stop thinking so much and just play football. Yeah, that's who Josh Allen is. When you see, down the stretch of these games when he's just dropping back and letting it fly. I was talking to a buddy about this last week. They're trying to make Josh Allen into much more Peyton Manning, when Josh Allen is much more of a Brett Favre with a running aspect to his game. He's a gunslinger, and is he going to throw some interceptions down the field? Yeah. And honestly, I'm fine with that. The turnovers are happening anyways. It's this, getting the ball deep in your own territory, and, you go 3 and out from inside your own 10 and you're punting it. Just, I got to walk a line here because I also don't want them, bombing it down the field every play. But it just feels like they got the reins on Josh too much. And, in the beginning part of the game, to me, like I said, it looks like he's scared to run, and it looks like he's hesitant to let the ball go. And the Josh Allen that's going to win us football games, he's got to be playing free. He's got to be playing fast. He's just got to be playing football. And it's not to say that he's not a smart quarterback that, can't read and process defenses and all that. I think he's plenty capable of doing that. I think he's really good at doing that. But he said in the past, he's got to take that first hit in the game. It helps him get in the rhythm, all that. All that still applies. And I think we've seen that from him in the past. And I think we've seen it this year when they let him do it. So I think just overall, if this team is going anywhere for the remainder of the season, that performance that you got from the defense against the Bengals, I think that's about the best you can ask for. Granted, there was a lot of yards given up. I'm not taking away from that, but you came into this game with, an offensive powerhouse, and the defense did enough to have the offense in the game. And you have to be able to rely on this offense to score 27, 30 points when needed. For the talent that you have on this offense, the assets put into this offense, going through 3/4 of the game, more than 3/4 of the game with 10 points, it's just not good enough. It doesn't really matter what your defense is doing. That's not good enough. Even if, the defense held the Bengals to 7, I would still be sitting here saying that's not good enough. Especially when you look at the fact that all the investments this offseason damn near were made on the offense. You got a first-round pick in Kincaid. You got Osiris Torrance in the second round. You brought in Deontay Hardy. You brought in Sherfield. Brought in Latavius Murray. Brought in Damian Harris. Like, all of these investments were made. Connor McGovern. All of these investments were made on the offensive side of the ball. And the defense kind of got some, afterthought additions. This offense needs to be able to carry this team. And, at this rate, that's the only way you're winning football games. The losses that you've had on defense are huge. They've done some things to try to, mitigate that. But in season, replacing Daquan Jones at the level that he was playing at, Matt Milano, what he means to this defense, Trey White finally coming back into form, some of those veterans on the team getting another year older. Hopefully, Von Miller continues ramping up and he starts being effective. But where he's at right now, I guess that would maybe be the one thing that I would be changing right now. I think until he's back to who he is, that he's got to drop back in snaps right now for a little bit. Just not getting enough out of him, and understandably so. He's an older player ramping back up after an ACL, but you just don't have to give him that big of a snap share if he's not contributing right now. Continue bringing him along slow, and hope that you got him for the playoff stretch, and hope that you get to the playoffs. But right now he's not playing good enough. But all that being said, the losses that this defense has sustained, I mean, at a certain point in the game, you had Dane Jackson and Christian Benford both, dealing with some injuries, and you had Josh Norman lining up at one cornerback and Rasul Douglas, who's been in the building for like 3 days at the other side. Josh Norman's got an extra 5 days. 35-year-old cornerback that was a free agent a week ago. I mean, they're out there playing snaps, and the offense that the Bengals have, you kept them to 24. You need your offense to be what bails you out there. What do we look like going forward? I mean, going into the bye, if you're not at least 2-1, I mean, I'm not a fan of making in-season, big decisions. I don't see it really being McDermott's way, but something's got to give. And am I opposed to, dropping Ken Dorsey and hoping, you can have Joe Brady be an interim and that gives you some sort of spark. And then you revisit it next offseason. Maybe that's something that has to happen. Because right now it's just not getting it done. And you got to go into this by at least 2-1 and then kind of reassess through the bye week and be ready for that long stretch. But you got another, 2 out of these 3 games coming up are more games in conference. You've lost enough of those. You're seeing the Jets again. They have a really good defense. I'll give them that, but their offense is still led by Zach Wilson. They've managed to get to 4-3. Not an opponent that you can take lightly. Like I said, the Broncos took down the Chiefs. Not an opponent that you can take lightly. So there's not a ton of time to get this figured out on offense, but they need to do it quickly. And hopefully this Broncos game gives us a chance for the offense to get right. Getting pretty sick of saying that this year. Some of these teams that, even though they're tougher teams, are teams that you expect to beat. So it feels like there's been, 3-4 games where, the Giants game, you were hoping the offense would get right. We barely squeaked by on that one. The Buccaneers game, offense looks better, still ends up coming down to the last possession. And it's because we have, the offense starts out good and then they fizzle out and have like 4 consecutive punts. Really just need to start seeing a full 60 minutes from this offense. And I'm not saying they have to score on every possession. But with your defense as banged up as it is, the players you're missing, you're not getting the same turnovers that you were in the beginning of the year. I mean, every possession is so much more valuable. And, these 3-and-outs, these bad interceptions, deep in your own territory, you're just putting your defense in a terrible position. And at the very least from this offense, to help the defense out and give you a much better chance of winning, you at least got to sustain drives long enough that you can win some of this field position game. Like I said, this whole game against the Bengals, that's a tremendous offense that you keep letting start at like their own 40-yard line. Even when the defense is getting stops there and you're getting the ball back to your offense, well, you didn't move the ball at all with your offense last time you had it, so you're getting the ball inside the 10 again. That's the biggest thing that needs to start happening. Is the points will come after. This offense needs to figure out how to sustain drives. And, we saw a little bit of it yesterday where we had, 3rd-and-1s and they're doing quarterback sneaks with Josh Allen. We saw so much of that in the past, and literally the 3rd-and-1, 3rd-and-2 territory. We wanted to bring in this more physical running back, so it's not always on Josh Allen. I don't care if it's all on Josh Allen. He had like 90% success rate on converting 3rd and 4th and shorts. You had the QB sneak option. You had, the naked boot. Off the naked boot, you had, the tight end leak out triple option. There was all kinds of things that led to wild success on 3rd and short, and keep doing that. This offense needs to just continue moving the sticks and get down the field. And I feel like if they can start doing that and start sustaining some drives, you have some athletes on this offense that can make some plays happen after that. You get Cook in the open field and he can burst out another 15 yards. The options are there. It's just a matter of this offense getting on track early and not coming into the game so sluggish. So looking forward, like I said, next week we have the Broncos. Hopefully a nice little get right game. A lot to figure out before we go into the bye. Philly's a team that's staring us down, but can't be looking ahead to that because neither of these next 2 games are a given. Like I said, a lot of work to do before you play the Broncos and a lot to do going down the stretch. All in all, do I think this is still a playoff team? I think it can be. I think there's still a realistic chance that you win the division. Miami's looking like very similar team to the Bills in that they're lumping up some bad opponents and they play somebody with a winning record and they lose. It's kind of what the Bills look like this year. So, realistically, like I said, there's about half a season left and you're one game back in the division. Realistically, they could still win the division. I'm not banking on that. I think you're looking at a wild card spot at this point if you make the playoffs. With this talent on this team, you got to at least get me to the playoffs. You got to give it a chance. We've seen teams like the Giants, when they won the Super Bowl, win it from a wild card spot. It's not, out of the realm of possibility. And do I think there is something to be said for teams getting hot at the right time? I absolutely do. And you want to be playing your best football, December going into January, into the playoffs. But that being said, you can't have the level of stink at the beginning of the year because of the position that you've put yourself into now, that damn near virtually every game left starts becoming, is this a must-win conversation? Who knows? Maybe this is where we see the offense really kick into gear, because as I was talking about earlier in the episode, it seems like this offense only gets going when their back's against the wall. Fourth quarter, you need 2 scores to win, and all of a sudden they come alive and they either do just enough or fall just short. Maybe the back's against the wall for the rest of the season is what they need, and we see them come alive. Sure hope that's the case. But anyways, that's going to do for today's episode. Like I mentioned before, please make sure you like, share, subscribe. We're dropping new episodes every week. We'll be breaking down this Broncos game next week. Hopefully, we're talking about a win. But we will see you next week. Make sure you check out our website, wanderingbuff.com. Jake's doing a great job. We have some articles up there, some merch. Just it's a great website. So do me a favor, swing by over there, take a look at it. Until next week, as always, go Bills.